Welcome to Expressing Financial Need and Sharing with a Purpose. My name is Jen Woodrum, and I am facilitating today. Jean Pedersen is going to be the one who is leading us and teaching our today's session. Before I hand it over to her, I just want to give you some information about Zoom. If you're not familiar with Zoom, if you have a question at any time, we prefer you to use the chat unless it's a question and answer period. So there is going to be times throughout the presentation where Jean's going to offer you some time to ask any questions or make any comments that you might have. We don't seem to have a raise hand function in this meeting room. So if you would go ahead and just type the words raise hand inside the chat, just to keep everybody from talking over each other. We have almost 70 people signed up for today, so we don't want you just opening your microphone at any time. So if you would go ahead and say that, then I'll acknowledge whoever has raised their hand and give you the floor to open your mic. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind sort of following that rule of order so we don't end up talking over each other. I will be muting microphones throughout, so if your microphone is open and it's not a question and answer time, don't be surprised if suddenly your microphone turns off. And again, that's just to keep us from having background noise during the webinar so that everybody's able to hear Jean as we're going along. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat if it's not related to what we're talking about, and that'll give me opportunity to help you out and kind of talk you through anything that's going on. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jean. Jean, go ahead.
Hello. So Jenna, you're sharing your screen, and now I can share mine. Okay. Well, thank you for coming to this webinar. This is a topic that I am passionate about. I have learned a lot about. And so I'm going to just, I'd like to switch back and forth, but in order to put my screen on the full thing, then I'm going to have to, let's see, go back, but escape and that kind of thing. So here we go. Expressing financial needs and sharing with purpose. The topics for today, reasons for the IRS compliant PD terminology, what is required for written and spoken communication, what about personal needs, explaining the ministry budget, Wycliffe USA PD terminology guidelines, sharing with purpose, additional tools available. While it is important to know how to share our needs, I think the main thing I want you to come away with today is that we don't start with our needs. If we lead with the need rather than the passion, then that's what people will hear. So that's why this sharing with a purpose. The main document, Expressing Financial Needs, PD Terminology Guidelines. Also, a companion one is discussing personal financial needs. So, why these Wycliffe rules? There's a set of deputized fundraising guidelines that I think they're put out by the IRS, and from those, the Finance Department in Wycliffe has guided us, the PD department, in what we can tell members that we can write and that we can say. This protects Wycliffe's nonprofit status. It also protects your partners. It protects you. Let's say the IRS decides to audit one of your partners. One of the things they're going to say, if the person has claimed tax credit for their charitable gifts, they're going to say, let me see the newsletters, the communications from these people. They'll see who they've supported, who they're supporting. And they're going to be looking at those. So if you have educated the partners well, according to these standards, then the partner is going to be able to continue to use that gift for the tax credit. Okay, maybe I should back up. Are there any questions?
Again, if you just type raise hand into the chat, I'll acknowledge you and you can turn on your mic.
Going on, what is required according to the IRS compliant terminology? The main thing is, the overriding principle is that Wycliffe has to show that they are controlling the funds that come to Wycliffe. And so what are things that show that they have control? We communicate clearly that financial gifts go to Wycliffe Bible Translators. We do this by saying, you can add a separate note saying preference for the Wycliffe Ministry of your name, ministry account number. It's important to say Wycliffe Ministry. It's important to say preference, because that way you're not instructing Wycliffe what to do. You're saying, this is what we would like. I mean, the partner, that's for the partner. If you're working in a sensitive entity, it's possible to direct gifts to SIL. You need to check with the entity. Some entities do not allow that. But there's a statement that can be said, instead of ministry, it's for the work of, anyway, it's in the document. I don't think I have it here. Some people have asked, well, what if, what do I tell partners who say, but I want the gift to go to you. I don't want Wycliffe to use it a different way. Well, then we refer to the ECFA. Oh, went the wrong way, sorry. Wycliffe is a member of the ECFA, a founding member, in fact. And one of the guidelines there says that the organization endeavors to use the funds as a donor desires. So we have that. Wycliffe is committed to this. So yeah, one of the tenets is that the nonprofit organization will honor the preferences of the donors wherever possible. If you're interested in looking at all of those tenets, you can see that. You can look at that website. Oh, okay. So let me see if is it clear?
Is what clear?
What's that? Is it clear what we are required to say? What's important?
We haven't been getting any questions yet about that.
Are meant to be covered by our budget. Wycliffe establishes our budget with enough room to cover personal choices, saving for emergency needs, saving for children's education, like college, their post-high school education, saving for medical needs, vehicle repair or replacement, travel. Now, see, you might do some travel with your partnership development. There's a $200 a month amount in our budgets for ministry, for partnership development.
Jean, we do have a question.
Oh, okay.
In the past 2 to 3 years, has anyone gotten into trouble with the IRS, and how has it worked out?
Thank you for that question. As far as I know, the IRS has not, we don't know of anyone who has had a problem. They did start hearing, it wasn't me, but I think the finance department started hearing from other organizations other nonprofit organizations that their donors were being audited and there were problems. And so Wycliffe started being proactive at that time. It's been several years now since we implemented these rules. Now, just because no one has gotten into trouble that we know of doesn't mean that we can take these lightly. We do want to take them seriously. And if you make a mistake, it's probably not gonna come against you, but we do want to be careful. So what can be said about financial needs? Let's say you don't have enough money in your medical savings account to pay $10,000 for your out-of-pocket, well, your deductible and your out-of-pocket. The thing that you can say is, it's back to that hinting. You know, it's the thing that we say in partnership development is don't hint anymore. Nowadays, when you're inviting people to partner in your Wycliffe ministry, then it's best to be upfront about that and not say, we need several new partners, or we have this need of $500 a month or something like that. It's best to invite personally. We can't when it comes to personal needs. So we can hint, we can say, one came to me just recently, oh, and this is a hard one. It's people have come home on furlough and they've spent all of their furlough funds and they don't have enough money to buy their tickets to return to the field. And so they want to reach out and ask people to help to pay for their tickets. Doesn't that count? We're going back to the field, and truly that's in your budget. And unless you have a launch expense account, a legitimate one, then you can't advertise that kind of a need. So yeah, you can work with a HERFL, I think, right, Cheryl? To establish an LEA, but there are only certain things for established members that work. There's a document that tells those.
Jean, you mentioned that there is a way there are certain things that we can say about our personal needs, even though we can't ask for people to give. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Let me, okay, so I'm gonna find my document there. This is discussing personal financial needs. So what we need to avoid is words like funds, budget, financial help, that kind of thing. So it's not appropriate to say, pray with us for God's provision for the funds to do some needed dental work or whatever. This is the kind of thing you can say. When Joe went to the dentist this week, we were shocked to learn he needs extensive dental work. Pray that we will know the best way to move forward with the dentist's recommendations. What I recommended with this couple that were trying to raise the funds for their ticket to return to the field, so if I can remember, it was please pray. Can't remember what words I said, but then I added, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And so that's maybe an invitation to allow people to ask. And if someone asks, you can tell them. If someone asks specifically about your financial needs, you can tell them any details, okay? So this is one about a car. Our car is old and not really worth repairing anymore. We're trying to figure out our next steps and would appreciate your prayers. I would add to that, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, because that invites the question. Okay, going back to, sorry, this. Oh dear, now back to the beginning. This is not helpful. So that's about personal needs. Now let's talk about explaining your budget. Referring to your budget as your Wycliffe ministry budget, that's appropriate. The budget created by Wycliffe for our ministry. There's an approved and recommended statement to explain your ministry budget in the Expressing Financial Needs terminology document. I did have a question prior to this webinar, and I'd like to answer that because others might have that same question, and that's how to describe an increase in the ministry budget. So you can say something like Wycliffe has recently increased the budget for our ministry to reflect whatever thing it is, the cost of living in the United States, or the increased cost of living in Papua New Guinea, or the growing size of our family, or our children growing. It's really all right to say that budgets for Wycliffe members are based on needs of the members and their families to carry out their ministry in their specific location, as long as it's linked to the ministry. You can talk about the needs of the budget. You might start, our Wycliffe ministry has recently increased, or my Wycliffe ministry has recently increased due to whatever factor that is. So are there any other questions about explaining your budget, or ways that you've struggled in this area?
Why are we not allowed to be direct regarding our financial status or needs? I think she froze on us. Jane, the question was, why are we not allowed to be direct regarding our financial status or needs?
Okay, and are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay. Please pray for my internet connection, because it just came up with it's unstable.
Several people are saying that they feel like people don't ask after indirect approaches.
It's okay to be direct. It's all right to say what we recommend is that if your need is greater than $1,000 or $1,500 for a couple, what you need to do is avoid a shock value. If you live in an area where budgets might be, people might be paid less, and you have a budget of $10,000, to say that your budget is $10,000, even though you only receive maybe half of that, would be shocking. So what we want to do is be careful.
Jane, there's some confusion going on in the chat right now. So you've talked about how you have to be indirect with personal needs, but you can be direct with your ministry budget needs.
Yes.
And I think the question about directness is regarding the indirect needs. Why are they not allowed to be direct about those personal needs?
Oh, okay. It's because they're not it's because they are included in the budget. Okay, the budgets were raised to be able to allow us to save money for those personal expenses. If something is not in your budget or in your launch expense budget, okay, if it's in your budget, then you can tell people what you're lacking in your ministry budget. If you have a personal need that is included in your ministry budget, then you can't talk about just that need. It's included in the ministry budget. if you have a need that's included in a launch expense budget, like you need a new car when you come back from furlough, or you need a new car when you return to the field. Those are things that are legitimate in LEA, launch expense account budget items. So then you can talk about that, and you will have a number that you can share. And now, am I making that clear? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jean. And I think also, Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, is this isn't just rules that Wycliffe has made up. These are rules that the IRS has issued to Wycliffe. And so we're trying to protect you and your partners by following those IRS guidelines as well.
Yes, really the IRS guideline is that Wycliffe will set, that the organization sets the salaries or the budgets for their staff. And so, yeah, we're getting into personal needs. That's not a ministry need. And so that's why we can't talk about that. We talk about our ministry needs, okay? Now we have a ministry budget that covers our personal needs. It's still our ministry budget. That's legitimate to talk about. It's not legitimate to talk about a personal need because that's not something that Wycliffe is endorsing.
I think, Jean, do you mind if I try to frame it a certain way?
Yes.
One thing that you might think of, because we're getting a lot of comments in the chat that, well, nobody saves for these unexpected needs, and so we don't have this money in our accounts. One way to think about it is the average person who gets a salary from a job that's not missionary based also has unexpected things like that come up that they maybe didn't save enough for, and they're not able to go and tell all of their friends and churches and say, hey, we need money for this. That's typically not an appropriate way to look for funds. And so it's similar here, okay? Yes, unexpected needs come up, and those are things that we have to pray to the Lord and ask for his guidance for, but you have to kind of think about it in that way. That's the way the IRS is coming at it, is you wouldn't do this in other jobs. We're not going to allow you to do it in this one. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Jen. That was a good explanation.
Next question came in was, where does GoFundMe accounts fit in with raising funds for personal needs?
As long as there's no mention of Wycliffe, someone can start a GoFundMe account for personal needs that you have.
Okay, so what you're saying, this is the next question from chat. So what you're saying is that when we have a personal need, so example for medical, that was unforeseen, we aren't allowed to tell people about it unless they ask specifically and personally. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Well, they can mention the need. They can't ask for help, financial help.
Yeah.
They can ask for prayer.
If you can mention the need without saying funds or budget or money or that kind of thing, yes. You can probably let a family member know about a need, and the family need can run with, the family member can run with that, letting others know about that need.
So here's an important clarification. I think this needs some fleshing out, I guess. So is this an issue of nomenclature? That is, we shouldn't phrase it as personal. We can describe it as a ministry expense.
Explain what would be a ministry expense.
So I think the answer probably to this question is if it's already included in your budget. So if you're raising your ministry budget and you're not at 100%, specifically and directly ask for more people to partner with you financially. However, if you're at 100% and you have a personal need that's above that 100%, you cannot approach partners directly for that. You can ask for prayer. You can let them know that that's a struggle in your family and that you'd like them to be praying with you, that they can talk to you about it if they want some more information. But you cannot directly ask partners for financial gifts if it's above your ministry budget and it's a personal need, unless it's on your LEA. So if you have a launch expense budget what Eugene was talking, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? And so that's.
And really, so many of us want to reduce our budget, take that voluntary reduction, because yeah, we get it. PD is hard. We want to be able to get started in our next assignment, or we want to just be able to be at 100% and stop doing PD. It's really a temptation to lower our budget. But this is really, I'm hopefully helping you to understand the ramifications of lowering a budget. Might be that you would not set yourself up to be able to save for these things. Now, one of the things that the PD editing team worked on is called managing your money. And we worked with Cheryl Schoblum and the HR finance department to get some materials ready and available. And that document is really helpful because it shows a lot of different scenarios that might come up that you need to be saving for. And so at the end of this document, that's one of the resources. But I guess it's important to me that not only talking about how to express the needs, but it's how to use the finances that God does provide in a way that will help us to have enough for what we need. We can't go backwards though. Let's say we haven't been saving for these things. I mean, my husband and I have an account for health, extra needs for health, for a car, for emergency. We have 6 different accounts, savings accounts that we put money into every month. Now I would add one for furlough if we were working overseas. We're not. That's a really important one. Okay.
We are getting a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Okay. The first one is a long statement. I'm going to go ahead and read it. I understand that the IRS rules are what they are and that Wycliffe needs to comply. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with how out of touch these rules are with the expectations of people who donate to non-for-profits.
A problem with what?
I think the struggle is still over the personal needs.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an answer to that. We're sorry that it is that way. There's not much we can do about it, unfortunately. What if support has been below budget and we need those missing funds to accomplish tasks in the budget, like returning to the field? Can people somehow give lump sums that make up what was budgeted but not given? So Larry, I'm going to just ask a clarifying question to you on this. Are you asking if a one-time gift can make up what the ministry budget wasn't? So if you have a gap in your ministry budget, okay, yes. He's asking if there's a gap in the ministry budget, I'm not at 100%, can one-time gifts be given to make that up?
Definitely, yes. And I think someone even said it something like requesting if people would consider giving one-time gifts to help make up for the shortfall in the past several months. You're talking about your ministry budget. You're talking about that's legitimate to ask.
And so the clarification then again is that the understanding was that they can't ask for one-time gifts.
Oh.
But I believe you can't ask for one-time gifts directly for personal needs. So
yes,
if it's towards your ministry budget, that's the difference here. It's ministry budget versus personal needs.
Yes, that's it, exactly.
Next question. I think we need to understand that there is a difference in talking about needs in writing versus face-to-face.
Nothing's going to be recorded. I mean, hopefully. I mean, if it's a recorded session, you wouldn't want to say something. Cheryl, I might need to ask you to speak into this because my understanding is that the same rules apply to spoken communication as to written. However, I mean, I said a statement earlier, you might share your need with a family member and the family member might run with that, but I don't know if I'm misspeaking to say something like that. So Cheryl, do you have a better understanding? No, okay. Yeah, the spoken communication, you often can bare your heart with someone. Well, you're going to talk about your financial needs when you're in that kind of a situation with a good friend, a prayer partner, one of those who's, I encourage people to have a few of those close prayer partners that they can tell about their emergencies. And I think this fits in there. But I wouldn't recommend it for in front of a congregation or even a small group. One-on-one, probably it's okay to talk about your struggles. Any other questions, Jen?
We're caught up for now.
Okay, let's go on. So summary statements. A direct link must not be drawn between the amount of gifts preferenced for your Wycliffe ministry and the amount of salary you receive. So like saying, well, you gave $500 this month and we received our full amount or something like that. That's no direct link. We can still thank the people for their generous gift and the way it helped. I think even to say, you helped me, never mind. I was going to say something that would probably be inappropriate. So, you helped us make our ministry needs that month or something like that is probably, it still needs to be linked to the ministry budget.
Somebody is concerned that sounds misleading.
Okay, what particularly? What I just said?
I think. Can you be more specific, Marila?
I wouldn't recommend saying
yes, what's on the screen.
That a direct link must not be drawn between the amount of gifts preference to your Wycliffe ministry and the amount of salary, the amount you received in salary. Okay, so what we want to avoid is seeing Wycliffe as this funnel, the gift, and then it goes directly to us. We need to be careful not to make that link. So but we can say we received your gift.
She's saying, but effectively it is.
Yeah.
I would say, aren't there situations, Jean, where even though a gift is preference to a missionary, say the missionary resigns or something happens, that the gifts given then wouldn't be returned to the donor, but they are still used for Wycliffe. So that would be an example of that not being a direct funnel.
Especially if they're given to the launch expense fund. And a person resigns and hasn't used all of those funds are Wycliffe's. So yeah.
Cheryl did make a statement. She said, I do think that if someone offers to help you with a personal need, you should tell them to give the money to you directly, not through Wycliffe. But that's a different stage in the discussion than what we were talking about.
Right. That's a good clarification.
The question is, can we say that we're $1,100 short a month?
Yes. Again, if you're a single person and you're, that might be shocking, but we've had even single people do kind of an email blitz and say, start with 1,500 or something, and it's not always successful. But yes, it's definitely appropriate to state the amount that you need. Now, USA PD terminology guidelines. These are things that our department is recommending, so that we say partner and partnership instead of support. Think of it this way. If you talk about support, you're talking about this kind of thing, people holding you up. If you're talking about partnering, you're talking about this working together. And that's the image that we want to give to people. We know that the average American understands support and says it. I mean, the donors often do that. They often refer to themselves as supporters, and yet we can educate them. They are partners in what we're doing. That's just the kind of thing that we can tell them. Share needs tastefully, no pressure. And there's a document called Invitations to Partnership, PD Guidelines. And this one, it talks about the kinds of ways that we can. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but it's okay to give a range to say people, we have partners who give anywhere from $25 a month to $250 a month, or that kind of thing. You can say we need $1,100 a month, and what this might look like is 2 partners at $200 a month, 3 partners at $100 a month, and 4 at $50 a month. You can break it down, or you can put pictures or puzzle pieces or something like that. So it's okay to do that. Read that document if you're wondering.
Before you get too much further, Jean, Emily's asking, what are some other ways that we can show that we're in a partnership instead of people simply supporting us?
Oh, well, prayer is another partnership. You know, as we share stories in the field, whether it's our story or not, you know, we like to find those Wycliffe stories that there are a bunch on Unity under presentations and meetings, stories and statistics. So there are a lot of stories. We like to share stories that show what God has done and to say, you have been a part of this through your encouragement, your prayers, your gifts. Is that the question? Is that answer to that question?
Yeah, and I think a couple of other ways that you can do that. So when you do have opportunities to meet with your partners or to call them, is give them the ministry of listening. Most people don't have anybody in their world to listen to them and aren't listening to receive, but are listening to really listen and care about what's happening in their lives. That's a ministry that you can do for them. From overseas, when you're writing your handwritten letters, let people know that you're praying for them. Ask them, if there's specific ways you can be praying. All those ways are how you're giving back to them as a partner.
You're the only one that tell us.
It froze a little bit. Jean, can you go back? We can hear you now.
Okay, now?
Yep.
Okay, so we visited some partners and they said, we support a lot of missionaries, but you are the only ones who have ever told us that you're praying for us. So yes, that's, and helping somebody with a computer problem, or giving them a ride to the airport, or taking care of their children. These are ways that we can partner with others, with our partners. Serve.
So we have a long statement, if it's okay to share.
We have a what?
We have a long comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we need to understand clearly that one of our jobs is to raise funds for Wycliffe's ministry, not ours. Mm-hmm. That's how we're seen by IRS, if I understand correctly. When it's Wycliffe USA's job, then to pay us appropriately, that's the budget that we help develop, and to see that there's no sense of conflict or interest or emoluments or misappropriation at all. So I appreciate the care that Wycliffe USA is taking in this, and thank you for helping us, even if it's frustrating for some of us who've gone through several different cultures of PD.
Well, thank you. Jen, capture that. I want to use part of that. Okay. That's great. We also recommend that you use either the percentage or the dollar amount. Now, if you have an opportunity, you're sitting down with someone and you can show them a graph, you know, that sorry, I don't have a picture of it, but that graph that shows so much percent goes to ministry expenses and all of those, all of the ways that it's used, and we get maybe between 50 and 60% of that as our take-home pay, then it's okay. But again, it's avoiding that shock value. if your budget is high, it's better to do either percentage or dollar amount. But when it gets to like I was saying, 1,500 for a couple, 1,000 for a single, below that, it's probably not going to be too shocking. You might consider a response tool if you haven't. There are several in the approved financial response tools document. Yeah, I want to move on with sharing with a purpose. So yeah, it's good to know how to share our needs, but let's lead with our passion. The passion is going to come across. You're passionate about the job that you're doing, passionate about Bible translation. Hopefully, if you aren't, then it might be good to ask the Lord why you're not feeling passionate about that anymore. Could He be leading you a different direction, or could you just need some renewal in your life? I know it's hard to have passion about PD. I understand that. But we can have passion about what we're doing. And in other words, what are you inviting people to be a part of? If you share with passion what you're doing, they're going to understand what you mean when you say, we'd love to have you partner with us in this ministry. If you're you're dry and you're tired and you're kind of questioning whether this is really where you should be spending your time, this isn't a good role for me, that kind of thing, then it's going to be harder to lead with your passion. Cast vision. We do this by telling people the impact of Bible translation, the impact of what we're doing. Share a story of transformation. Again, there are a lot of stories available for you to use, and you can make them yours just simply by practicing them and telling them, or you can put them in your letter. Share how your role relates to Bible translation if you're not a Bible translator. A linguist translation worker, I should probably say. And then invite partnership. Inviting partnership is pretty important nowadays. Now, not across the board. I know that there are still some cultures. There are some cultures in the United States. There are some age places where it really wouldn't be very well accepted. But we hear stories after story of somebody finally says, okay, I'm going to invite somebody, and so they start with their sister, and the sister says, why have you never asked me before? I've been waiting for you to ask me. Yes, I'll be glad to partner. A friend, a good friend. Oh, can I practice this? We'll help people to prepare this kind of thing of the talking about a story of transformation and how your role relates, and then inviting partnership. Can I practice this on you before I talk to somebody else? And their friend goes, wow, I'm really excited about what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. So it's fun to see what this kind of thing does. So yes, it's important to know our need, to be able to explain our need, but this is the heart of it, how we can really get new partners. Here's something I'd like to give you an example. This picture, that's actually a portrait in the Wycliffe USA headquarters building. This painting was made with fingerprints. Completely, every dot on it is a fingerprint. Now, a fingerprint in and of itself is not beautiful, but putting together all of those fingerprints, that makes a masterpiece. Well, likewise, we have people who are praying and giving for us to be able to do our Wycliffe ministry. And I think of every gift and every prayer as adding to the masterpiece that God is making through our ministry. I'd like to invite you to add your fingerprints. Would you pray about partnering financially in our Wycliffe ministry? So there's it shows how to get to that place on Unity where you can find stories, and there's also some invitations in there. Additional tools, the financial partnership record, some of you might use it. TNT Connect is another way to keep accurate records of those who are giving and how much. The financial partnership record is a good way to keep track. Better than Unity, because what Unity doesn't show is that, okay, our church is going to start partnering for $250 a month, but it only shows the last 12 months. Or likewise, it's not going to show our church is not going to be able to continue their partnership, or this person isn't going to continue their partnership. You aren't going to be able to see that, but you can see it on the financial partnership record. So lapsed gifts from faithful partners. It's good to check. I mean, the donor manager or TNT Connect, those kind of things will help you keep a running record of those who are giving or who haven't been giving for a month or two. And I usually think, give it a couple of months, but then contact them. And this document shows ideas of ways to reach out, but really it's appropriate. It will help people to understand that you notice their gifts. So well, thank you notes, of course. But you know, it may be simply that the envelope got lost in the mail, or their credit card number changed, and they've set up for credit card gifts, and then it's just alerting them to that, and they're most of the time really glad. But we can also approach it this way. Is there something going on in your life that we can pray with you about? So we're showing that we're caring, we're noticing, and we're caring. So I talked to you a little bit about the personal money management helps. So there's the document called Managing Your Money. There's also a personal spending plan, depending on whether you're overseas or whether you're in the US. And then there's a PDF about understanding the 110%. It's really good. There's both like an infographic PDF, and then Michelle, thank you. And then there's David McCormick is explaining it with a video. So those tools are available. And I think then there's a financial stewardship Bible study and tips. And I guess this is something that's close to my heart, is just if we get to 100%, but then we don't use our money wisely, we're going to have to do more PD, or we're going to be in the point where we're going to be saying to people, help, we don't have enough money. Or we're going to be in the red with the branch. And anyway, Wycliffe's not a bank, so we can't really be there, stay there. So that's a Bible study about financial stewardship and tips. I think that's all. Any other questions?
Gina, I have a question. With your PowerPoint, are all these documents linked in your PowerPoint? So if somebody has your PowerPoint, they can click?
They are, yeah. All of those, the underlined ones, those are links.
Okay, so when I send out your recording for this, I'm going to send you a link to the PowerPoint so that you'll have all the links for the documents inside the PowerPoint, because there are several.
Okay.
Larry, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, my question is, I think I've heard that we can get up to 115% per month that's over our budget. And so I'm wondering if we've been low for a number of months and then we're getting ready to go back to the field and we need someone to give a lump sum, but it would put us well over that 115%. How do we access those funds that we need?
Yes, there's a form, and you can request the money from the reserve account. Cheryl, where is it available? You need to unmute.
Oh, there we go. I'm not used to doing this. The reserve request is on Unity under one of those financial pages of stuff.
But you could put in the search bar, what's it called? Reserve account request?
Reserve account release request.
Release request. Reserve account release request. Okay.
Right. Or you can write to HR finance, and she'll help you. That would be Val Hess.
HR_finance_.
Yeah, I'm writing it out here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
It takes a while. You have to have money in your reserve first, then you can ask for it, and then you get it. If you ask for it by the 20th of the month, then you can have it in the next pay. But if you've been low in previous months, you can sometimes get it because of that as well. So,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome. Hi.
Hi.
A comment by Randy is my understanding is that the request will not be honored until the next month's income.
Yes, that's true. It will come with the next month's income.
Yeah, it has to be in the reserve before you can ask for it.
Sure.
And once you ask for it, then it comes in the next pay. If you ask for it before the 20th of the month.
I see that, Ray, you linked to the Translation Takes a Team brochure that has the explanation and the graph. Thank you for that. I'm just now looking at the chat.
Okay, we still have about 7 more minutes. So if you have any questions or would like, type them into the chat. If you'd like to turn on your mic to talk, feel free to do that. Okay, I'm going to give some end comments here while we're waiting on people to ask more questions. You will be receiving, this has been recorded, so you will receive the link to this recording. You'll receive the link to Jean's PowerPoint that has a link to all the documents that were mentioned throughout our session today. And you'll also be receiving a link to a survey. This is the first time that we've done this session, so we do want to hear your feedback on how the webinar went, what you wish we would have done differently, maybe content that you wish we would have included that we didn't include this time, and any other kind of comments or advice that you have for us. We're always trying to improve these. It should just take about 3 or 4 minutes to fill out. And again, you should receive all of that later today.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Melanie. We've only been in Wycliffe for 6 years, and we are serving at JARS. My husband's with SIL. And we did our PD in California where we were living before, and now we live here for 6 years. And we kind of have like 2 very distinct groups of partners. We have like people that were our friends, at our church, our old church where we grew up, like our family that we stay in touch with like all the time. And like, there's no really effort with the PD. It's almost like we just stay in touch with them because we know them and we talk to them all the time. But then we have this like whole second group of people that we kind of met literally most of them like one time when we spoke at a church or when we spoke at a Wycliffe Associates banquet, and they heard us speak that one time and signed up, and many of them are still giving to us 6 years later, which is like amazing. But we have only taken one PD trip back there, mostly because we've had 3 kids in that 6 years. And so we have like very little relationship with, sorry, there's my kids making noise. So we have very little relationship with those kind of, that other half of our PD team. And so I'm kind of, even when we send them thank you notes and ask them like to respond, or we send them an email and ask them to respond with how we could be praying for them, or like the one time that we were there, some of those people, we reached out them to try to set up like meetings, and like none of them responded. And they don't respond to like our thank you cards or emails or anything. But now we're getting to the point where after 6 years, our PD's dropped off a bit, and we really need to like be more energized and intentional. And some of these people, we want to ask them for increases because they've been giving like $25 or $50 for like 6 years. And we're like, okay, if they could increase that a bit, we could probably get back up to 100%. So I'm just wanting advice from everybody or anybody about kind of how to reach out to those people that you haven't had a lot of contact with, that are, even though we send thank you notes and newsletters, it seems weird to now ask for more when we haven't had that like personal contact with them in 6 years. So sorry, that was I needed to set the context, I felt like, but that was a long question. Oh, I see people are chatting me responding. I see, okay.
Sometimes too, I would encourage like how you're reaching out. So we talk, at least I tell my new members when they're trying to reach out to people about financial partnership, a lot of times it's going to take between 6 and 8 touches. And then by that, we mean Facebook messages, text messages, all of that before you ever get somebody to even meet with you. And that's just because, and it's not necessarily because that people don't want to meet with you. It's because everybody's going at 300 miles per hour in their lives, and they just need those regular reminders to meet. So that might be, I don't know if that's part of what's going on for you. But a lot of times it feels like you have to harass somebody before they'll meet you. And it's not that you're harassing them. It's that they're just busy.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, we had like a week and a half that, that we were there. And so it had to fit into our schedule. But honestly, these are mostly, I would say mostly they're older people, probably 50 and over, that came to the Wycliffe Associates banquets or came to churches that we visited. And like I said, signed up. Honestly, some of them, if I were to see them in person, I wouldn't even remember their face after 6 years. And so I really feel, I don't want to say guilty, because I know it's all part of God's plan that we were to meet them that one time and they were to be a part of this with us. But I would just like them to respond but I don't know how. The phone calls, I saw someone said that's so hard for me. Like, I think it's hard for all of us to just call somebody up out of the blue that you haven't talked to in 6 years and just try to make a conversation. But I mean, maybe.
I would also say what's happening more and more in our culture is that people don't want you to call them on the phone unless you text them or message them some other way first.
Right.
Most people just aren't going to pick up their phone. And so to do that first, and so maybe your text message looks like, hey, I would love to get to know you better or to see how things have been going. I'd love to spend some time praying with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, however you want to do that. Would it be okay if I called you on this day at this time? And see if they'll respond to that kind of text message. And you might end up with just a whole conversation in text. But that's just kind of how culture is going these days, is that people don't want to talk on their phones.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not criticizing like Wycliffe's model, but when we went to a PD coach like 2 years ago and worked one-on-one with them, the PD coach was saying the new model is to write letters and telling them that you're going to call them in response to the letter. And I just thought, I don't feel like most people want those phone calls anymore. And it's
Melanie,
good to know.
Melanie, the personal notes that you've written, the thank you notes, you have given the personal touch. I would I'd do a little bit more with that and thank them for investing in your Wycliffe ministry. And you could even just say, would you be able to pray about increasing your amount along with that thank you,
Right.
because you have been regular in it. I wouldn't normally recommend that if you haven't been thank yous.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of the way I feel stuck, is we haven't been having a personal relationship. But I feel like because part of me feels like, that's why I wanted to hear other people's experience, because part of me feels torn of like, if this is all that they want
Mm-hmm.
and they're not responding, and they like just getting our notes and getting our newsletters, then we can just ask through a note or a newsletter, because we just can't, geographically do anything else.
I would make it as personal as possible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just send it with the newsletter.
Right. Okay. That's helpful to think about. Yeah.
But the fact is, are invested. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I was just saying, there are tons of comments pouring into the chat.
I know. I haven't even read them all yet.
I will make sure that saves to my computer, so I will make sure to share the chat with everybody.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of glad to hear that that people just have the same, situation, and that we're not alone. And I mean, I know everybody has the geographic issue, as well. So I understand that's common.
Thank you all for coming today.
Yes, we are going to go ahead and wrap up. We are a little bit over time and want to respect everybody's time that they dedicated to this. So thank you for joining us. Again, we'll have that survey out to you along with the PowerPoint that has the links to all the documents and the link to this recording. For yourself, you can share it with anybody else that you would like. We also, if you have more questions, we also have the PD inbox that you can find on Unity. So if you go to Unity, staff resources, PD resources, one of those top things at the top. I don't remember what it says, Jean. I think it's like PDF FAQs or something. It's the biggest button on the left-hand side. If you go in there, there's an email address for you to that you can ask more questions at. Thank you for joining us. Jean, if you want to stay,
Okay.
I'm going to stop the recording now.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.